Hey, this is the Big Hardcore Gamer, and in this video I'll be reviewing 007 First Light, which I played on PC through Steam. Thanks to IO Interactive and Keymailer for the review code. As always, this has no effect on the review because I like to make content that you can trust. There also won't be any story spoilers in this review, but I will be talking about Easter eggs and we'll be showing a couple of examples. So you can skip past them if you don't want to see them. Watch until the end, leave it a like and a hype, share it out, and also hit the subscribe button if you're new. And also consider becoming a member of the Hardcore Gamers Club, where you'll get early access to some of my content. Right, let's get into it. 007 First Light is an origin story where we play as a 26-year-old James Bond, a naval air crewman who MCs a lot of potential in and decides to recruit him to join the revitalized 00 program. It's not long before the recruits are sent on a mission to bring in a rogue 00 agent, which goes terribly wrong. Bond must then team up with his mentor Greenway and, go to track down this rogue agent. Now, this was actually a really good, well-structured story with great pacing. The first couple hours, they're basically the game's tutorial, as you would expect, but what I loved about it was just how much it was like the Bond movies. After introducing us to the new Bond and giving us an action sequence, we then get the Bond intro that we're used to from the movies, with the theme tune and the silhouettes of women dancing. Then Bond goes through the 00 training in the most cinematic tutorial I've ever seen. And I actually liked, Patrick Gibson as the younger James Bond. This Bond is impulsive, definitely a bit of a smart ass, doesn't like following orders, but will get the job done. I love the quips that he makes after a fight, cheesy but very funny.
Don't forget to flush.
I love the little details they added to his animations as well. Like he'll kick in a door and then take the time to adjust his jacket or fix his ear, which always made me laugh at just how much of a poser he was. I thought Greenway was also a great character. And Lenny James did an excellent job playing him. I love the relationship between him and Bond, and seeing how much Greenway just can't stand him early on in the game. Then seeing their relationship change and the banter between them as Greenway starts to warm up to him. I mentioned that it's well structured, and that's basically because it's structured like a Bond movie. It's got the stealth sequences, and you see Bond like doing actual spy work, the gadgets, the big explosive action set pieces. It's got the beautiful women, so ignore all the grifters online that have said otherwise, and it actually has a decent main villain, which I'll just refer to as Gold Mask. Now, I don't want to give away any spoilers, so let's talk about the gameplay. 007 First Light combines the stealth from Hitman with the over-the-top action set pieces from Uncharted, with a sprinkle of Akin from Watch Dogs. Now, although it does take some of the stealth from Hitman, this is really just, a Hitman light. The stealth isn't as in-depth as Hitman, but it takes some of the features like being able to cause distractions and sneak past, or being able to dart them, which is just this game's version of poisoning them, and then walk past. The game is linear, but there are some sections where you have multiple ways to enter. Being able to eavesdrop, to find clues to get to your objective. The difference is that if you're terrible at stealth and get caught sneaking around, sneaking through an area, you have options, so you won't automatically fail the mission. To start with, there's the bluff mechanic, where Bond can, talk his way out of a situation if he has enough resource, which is basically called instinct in this game. You'll see an icon above their heads, which works as a countdown for you to get out of the area before they realize that you're up to no good. Once the timer runs out, they'll have a solid white dot above their heads, and you won't be able to bluff them again. Now, if there's a watcher nearby, which is basically an NPC that already has the white dot above their head, the bluff won't work. Now, one thing to say about the enemies in this game is that they're a little dumb. Now, if you've played IO's Hitman games before, you should be used to this. When I say dumb, I mean like dumb in a way that they're easily fooled or easily distracted.
Was that? What was that?
What we've got here? What's this?
That was weird.
Dumb in a way that they're fun to deal with, but when they do catch you, they definitely will give you a challenge. So when you do get caught, you'll get into a fight and it will attract other enemies in that small area for you to deal with. They've made this Bond a brawler. I played with the DualSense controller and every punch felt impactful. There's grappling and different combos. You can use the environments, you know, smashing their heads into walls, mirrors, tables, fridges, even toilets. There's always, you know, something to pick up and throw at their heads, which stuns them long enough for you to run in and do a takedown. And you can use your gadgets, you know, during fights. There were times when I needed to blind one of the enemies, you know, with the laser strap from my Q watch, and then, you know, go and do a finisher, or switch on a massive fan to throw them off balance to give me a breather. When you're combining all of these things together, it makes you feel like a real badass. The most challenging part of the melee combat is dealing with the brutes. These are basically, you know, the enemies that have a red attack warning and can be a pain in the ass to deal with when there's multiple brutes in a fight. When you defeat all of the enemies in a section, you get a situation contain notification at the top of the screen. So if you do still have other objectives to complete in that area, you can. And then when you move on to the next area, you'll get a new set of guards that most of the time they won't even realize you're there. Now, for gadgets, they've kept things surprisingly simple, but it actually fits into the story. He's not a 00 agent yet, and you know this game is him earning the number, so he's not going to have the full arsenal of gadgets. His main gadget is the Q watch, which links to the Q lenses, allowing Bond to scan the area. This highlights hostiles, electronics that can be hacked or tampered with, and you know, things that can be shot to explode. You also have a small selection of gadgets that you can select, such as a camera that sends out shockwave and a smartphone that shoots out darts to make your target sick enough to allow you to pass by unnoticed. And there's a limit to the gadgets you can carry on a mission, but I didn't really think it made much of a difference. For example, when doing one mission, I forgot to equip the dart phone, and I needed to get past the guard, so I just lasered him instead and got the same effect. Now, when you're going through an area where enemies pull out their guns, Bond's license to kill will be activated and you will get into fun shootouts. Now, one of the complaints I've been seeing online for this game is that Bond will go in without enough ammo. He'll basically go in with a spare clip and that's it. There are also no ammo boxes like you'd find in other games. I actually didn't have any issues with this because there is a cover system, but as well as that, they actually want you to keep moving forward in the coolest way possible. Your cover will also get destroyed from gunfire in some areas, and they'll also throw in frag grenades and flash grenades to force you to move out of cover. So they added some great alternatives. To start with, you can throw your empty gun at a nearby enemy, which stuns them and allows you to run up and do a takedown, which will also take their weapon from them. And then when you run over the same weapon from another fallen enemy, it will pick up the ammo from that gun. It has to be the same weapon though, and not just the same weapon type. And you know, there's always some red canisters or barrels to shoot to cause some big explosions. I remember one area in particular where it actually didn't even make sense that there would be red exploding canisters there to shoot. Did it make sense? Absolutely not. Was it still fun to shoot and watch the enemies go flying? Absolutely. There are also blue pipes and objects to shoot. These will usually let out a lot of smoke so that they can't see you, or you know, make an object drop and crash through a platform they're standing on. When you're going through these big sequences and you're disarming enemies and using their weapons to blow shit up, and you're constantly moving forward, it all feels really cinematic, which is what they were going for. Now, remember how I said the enemies were a little dumb? Well, most of them also can't shoot straight. So I didn't find myself dying much from enemy gunfire. In fact, most of the deaths were from melee fights, because even on intended difficulty, these brutes hit pretty hard and also have some annoying grab attacks. Speaking of difficulties, there are three. Story, which is easy mode, intended, which is normal, and purist, which is hard. Going by the name intended, I think they just wanted us to have, you know, that power fantasy of being James Bond and being able to stylishly fight or shoot our way out of dangerous situations. I played a couple sections on purist mode to see what it was like when making this review, and I can tell you purist mode is to humble you. I mean, fighting doesn't feel much different apart from the attack indicators for frontal attacks being removed. The enemies also hit a bit harder as well and will kill you pretty quickly. But when it comes to enemy shooting, they can suddenly shoot straight. I will be replaying this entire game on purist. You know, it's not required for the completion trophy, but I just want the challenge. Now, speaking of a challenge, you unlock taxims after completing the tutorial missions. Well, you unlock like the first couple after completing these missions, and then when you complete the game, you unlock the rest. Now, these are training simulations where you complete challenges to move up a global leaderboard. Completing these simulations earn you points that can be spent on new outfits and weapons to be used in other simulations. They're fun and very addictive, and in the Rules of Spycraft trailer that IO Interactive put out before the game release, they did hint that they planned on adding more missions to this. In fact, there's already a driving simulation that they're teasing on the menu page, you know, that will be released later on. Now, you may not agree with me for putting this in as a feature, but I have to say nostalgia is a pretty big feature in this game. One of the things I always used to love in the movies was Bond going into Q labs and just playing around with the gadgets and pissing Q off. So obviously the first thing I did when I entered Q labs in the game was walk around and just mess around with every gadget I could. And there's a lot of Easter eggs in Q labs from the movies. Some of them I couldn't remember which movie I'd seen them in, and some of them I instantly knew when I saw them.
Almost took my finger off.
The neurotoxin in its tip is so powerful, losing a finger would be the least of your worries.
To be honest, this game is filled with Easter eggs, and some of them are really subtle.
Stop touching your ear. What? I said, stop touching your bloody ear.
Stop touching your ear.
Sorry? Put your hand down.
Another thing I loved doing was listening to random conversations that didn't have anything to do with the main objective. I would listen to office workers at MI6 talk about other cases. I would also listen to conversations from NPCs at some of the buildings that Bond has broken into. It reminded me that even though I was dealing with professional killers, there were still just some regular people in these offices doing their 9 to 5. And the game looks stunning. I played on PC. What's really surprising to me is there's no ray tracing in the game at the time of making this video, but it's got things like clear mirror reflections, which I don't usually see in games that have ray tracing turned off. When going into the Taxim area, I was really confused and had to Google if ray tracing had been added to the game. And the OST, man, that soundtrack is so good. It has, you know, that Bond movie feel in every section of the game, and when that Bond theme tune hits, it always gets me hyped. Also, I was so glad that the PC version of the game actually uses the adaptive triggers on the DualSense, which you don't always find when plugging the DualSense control in. It's not on the level of the Sony first party games, but it was still nice to see a third party dev actually use them. So now it's time for the dislikes, or really just criticisms in my case. I said this game was beautiful. Well, you know what would have been great? A photo mode. It is actually criminal not having a photo mode in a game that looks this damn good. I'm sure it'll be added in an update later on, but I wish more devs would add them to the games at launch. I mean, I'm playing on PC, and the capture button on the DualSense controller doesn't work through Steam, so I was having to take one end of the controller to press F12 just to take screenshots. You know, it's not convenient. Hopefully they add the photo mode soon.
There's Greenway.
Next is the pre-order outfits. Now, I'm not complaining about there being different pre-order outfits, you know, available depending on where you purchase them, or if you have an NVIDIA graphics card or anything like that. I really don't care about any of that, right? That sort of thing just doesn't bother me. What I'm talking about is that those outfits and the outfits that you unlock in Taxim can only be used in Taxim. Now, I understand why they locked it out of the main story mode, because the outfits match the chapters and locations. Okay, so I get it, but I think they need to add the option for people who don't care about that, you know, to be able to use these outfits that they've already unlocked, or make them available on the second playthrough or on chapter select. And finally, it's the driving. There are some chase scenes in the game, and you already know about one of them from the state of play, but if you're looking for a chase scene with Bond driving an Aston Martin kitted out with gadgets, you're going to be disappointed. Yes, I understand that he doesn't have the 00 status yet, but I still would have liked to have seen it, and it's the #1 complaint that I've been seeing from people online. Maybe that's why the next tax sim being added is a driving sim. I mean, hopefully this is something that they add in the sequel or DLC, because with how the game ended, I definitely hope we get some DLC for it. So now it's time for the verdict. Now, if you're new to reviews on this channel, I don't do numbered scores. Instead, this is how I grade games. First of all, there's the did not finish, which is for games that I put a lot of time into but couldn't bring myself to finish. Then there's bad, average, good, and must play. 007 First Light is a must play title. Not only is it extremely fun to play, but it's very cinematic and has a good Bond story. The writers for this game understand, you know, Bond movies. They also brought the fun back to Bond, because the last few movies have been unnecessarily serious. It's got everything I would want from a Bond movie, but in the form of a video game. The action, the nostalgia, the women, the exotic locations. They did a great job of making me feel like I was actually in a Bond movie. It's also, you know, a decent length, so I have no problem with replaying it on purest difficulty. I'm not going to comment on price because, you know, as I said at the beginning of the video, I got a free review code for the game. What I will say though is whether you're planning on treating yourself now or waiting for a sale, this is a game that I definitely recommend you play if you love the James Bond franchise. If you're not into Bonds but you love good Uncharted style action games, this is also a game for you. Right, so that's the end of the review. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave it a like and a hype and share it out. These videos take a long time to edit, so, you know, if you can get it out to as many people as possible, it'd be much appreciated. Also, consider becoming a member of the channel where you'll get early access to some of my content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.